Good morning, everybody. It's Monday morning, and welcome to Penn Vicarage. Lovely to see you, and thank you for joining us for our talk for this morning as we continue our adventure through the Bible. And we're in the book of Psalms, as you know, and Psalm 134. Just to remind you of the context of Psalm 134, we've been looking at 15 what they call songs of ascent. And today's is the last one. This is the if you go from 120 to 134. So 15 what's called songs of ascent. Ascent means go up, as in Ascension Day or going up. And these were basically songs that were used by pilgrims as they went on their pilgrimage to Jerusalem. As I say, and Psalm 134 is the last of those. And it's very short, but it's an absolute beauty. Psalm 134, so here goes. Come, bless the Lord, all you servants of the Lord, who stand by night in the house of the Lord. Lift up your hands to the holy place and bless the Lord. May the Lord, maker of heaven and earth, bless you from Zion. And this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Okay, short psalm this one, but a very beautiful song. I remember singing it as a child in the Christians. I used to one of the few songs I could play on the guitar. Remember this one? I used to sing it a lot. And as I say, it's a beautiful little song. The context is, as I say, that it's a song of ascent, and it being the last one is thought to have been probably the last one that was used. Either it was used for the pilgrims having just arrived in Jerusalem. There's another thought, which is quite an interesting one, that it could be used actually as pilgrims were sent on their way. Because remember, the important thing about pilgrimage is not just arrival at a place. It's not just some sort of, personal joy, personal journey. But actually, what a good pilgrimage should do, and then encounter with God does, is it fires you up and sends you back into the world again. So this psalm could have been, and quite likely, a psalm that is used kind of by pilgrims on arrival when they got to Jerusalem. But it could also have been used by people as they were sent on their way. Go, as we say, go in peace to love and serve the Lord, as we say at the end of communion services. So that our worship is finished, but our service now continues, if you know what I mean. So they were kind of sent out into the world. So that's the kind of context, either on arrival or even possibly when they were sent out from Jerusalem afterwards. Go out, get back into the world and do it. But what can we say also about the what's in this psalm? There are two or three things which come out a lot. Firstly, there's a big focus here on God. Notice the word the Lord. I think it's mentioned you've only got 3 verses here, but in the process of the 3 verses, the Lord gets mentioned 5 times. So you get the impression here that the massive focus here on God. And again, that's what our Christian life should be about, shouldn't it? That's why they used to build churches with spires on, because they were pointing upwards, pointing to God. And that's the whole this psalm is about. It's about God. And so a pilgrimage should be about an encounter with God. We're not so much finding ourselves as we're finding God. And that's what our Christian pilgrimage should be. It should be about finding getting right with God. And noticeably here in this psalm, in a mere 3 verses, God gets mentioned 5 times. That's the first thing. Another word that gets mentioned a lot is the word bless. Several times you get it in verse 1, and you get it in verse 2, and you get it in verse 3, the word bless. And it's interesting actually, because the word bless goes both ways. It's come bless the Lord, and it's may the Lord bless you. So blessing is both upwards to God and also downward to us. But it's interesting actually that these two are not symmetrical. They're not 2 sides of the same thing, really. They're not the same. When we bless God, it's about remembering just how magnificent and amazing God is. It's about us putting a smile on God's face. It's about us. We bless the Lord when we remember just what a fantastic God is. God blessing us is not the same at all. It's about he is so much greater than we are, and we are so much smaller than him. But it's about him making us happy. So there's a thing here about the blessing here in the song goes both ways. We bless God. We bless God by honouring God. We bless God by obeying God. We bless God by doing what God says. We bless God by being sold out for God and about doing what God wants and putting God first. We bless the Lord like that. But the Lord also blesses us. The Lord fills us with his Holy Spirit. The Lord inspires us and guides us and leads us and helps us. and fills our lives. So notice here that there's blessing here 3 times, as I say, in 3 verses. But the blessing goes both ways. The blessing is that we bless God, and that God blesses us. So there's a big theme here of blessing. We bless God and God bless us. It goes both ways. That's the second thing. Thirdly, who are the people doing the blessing here? Well, it says here about servants of the Lord who stand by night in the house of the Lord. I think that was really intended for the kind of what they might call Levitical singers, they were known as. Originally, in the time of Moses, and when they used to carry the Ark of the Covenant, which is basically God's amazing treasure chest that they used to carry around with them. These were the people that used to carry the Ark around. They were kind of, stewards, if you like, of the Ark of the Covenant. They used to carry it around. But after Jerusalem was taken, when Jerusalem was when the Ark was kind of settled and the people settled Jerusalem as their place, then their role was changed. Instead of carrying the Ark around, because it was kept in the same place from now on in, was the idea anyway. Instead, they were there to worship, and they used to worship night and day. And I think that's quite interesting that it was an all-day thing, all day and all night. Because actually, in Psalm 121, he blesses us all in never. It says that God neither slumbers nor sleeps. He's with us night and day. He's with us all the time. And actually here, interesting, as God blesses us, we bless God. That actually these people here are called to bless God by day and by night. And you get the impression there was a kind of a day shift and there was a night shift as well, of people in the temple constantly praising God and honouring God. And how did they do it? Well, a couple of things. Lifting up your hands was a sign of a kind of bodily act of worship. It was a kind of demonstration of worship. But it's also interesting, it says, to the holy place in verse 2. Apparently the word to the holy place is a kind of, can be taken both ways. It can either be to the holy place, or it can also be translated as in holiness. So it isn't just, we don't just worship God in his particular holy place, but we can worship God in holiness, which means holy means being set apart for God and about being right with God and so on. And here it says, lift up your hands. It can be either saying to these Levitical singers, worship God in God's holy place, or it can be, in a sense, to all of us, saying, worship in holiness, be right with God, do things God's way, put God first, be holy to the Lord. And actually that's the way to worship, as Jesus would say, in spirit and in truth. So the first of all thing, we can lift up your hands as an act of worship, but also, but you can either be in the holy place or it can be in holiness. But then finally, one other thing I just want to point out really, it says at the end, may the Lord, maker of heaven and earth, bless you from Zion. That Zion was the holy place, and that was the place where God was thought to be, and that may the Lord bless you from there. But of course, actually now, in a sense, the new Zion is Jesus. And that in the same way they used to get blessed, God would bless people from Zion in the past. Likewise today, we get blessed from the new Zion today, the new Jerusalem, which is Jesus. And he is the place where we meet God. In him does the blessing come. And that we don't need, it's good to go on pilgrimages and things, but in a sense, God is everywhere and Jesus is everywhere. And when 2 or 3 are gathered together, he says, I am there with them. And so in a sense, we can encounter Jesus today. And Jesus is with us, and from him comes the blessing today. And in those days, God blessed them from Zion, but nowadays, the blessing comes from Jesus. So short psalm, 5 things briefly from it. Firstly, to say a big emphasis here on God. God gets mentioned 5 times in a mere 3 verses. Massive focus here on God. Secondly, it's about blessing God and God blessing us. There's lots of mentions. 3 times the word bless gets mentioned. God blesses us and we bless God too. The people doing it were these temple singers who had been there to look after the treasure chest, the ark, and nowadays they were there to lead worship in the temple. Fourthly, they were called to worship God not only in the holy place, but also in lifting up the holy hands. But also, holy place can be holy place, but it can also be in holiness, which is something that we can all do. by being right with God and about putting God first in our lives. And finally, in a sense, those days they used to get may the Lord bless you from Zion. Today we have a new Zion, we have a new Jerusalem, and in Jesus comes the blessing to you and I today. Friends, I hope that makes sense. I hope that's helpful. God bless you. Do please share these messages with your friends so lots of people can enjoy them as well. Thank you so much